Good evening. My name is Britt Bird, Senior Planner for Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. Calendar item number 1, 500 Kent Avenue. A private application seeking a zoning map amendment, waterfront special permit, parking garage special permit, and CPC certification to facilitate a 23-story commercial development of approximately 576,200 square feet with 23,000 square feet of waterfront public access at 500 Kent Avenue in South Williamsburg, Community District 2. Community Board 2 voted to approve this item on March 13th, 2024. Please state your name and present the application.
Good evening. My name is Raymond Levin. I'm with Herrick Feinstein. I'm Senior Special Counsel. We represent the applicant for this rezoning, which is in South Williamsburg. Also with me is Nebel Gaksabe, who's with Marvell Designs, architects for the project, and he'll describe it in a little more detail later in the presentation. Now, how do I do this?
The forward and back is on.
Let's see. Oh, look at that. Great. The site lies on the Brooklyn waterfront where significant development is proposed or proceeding or has been recently completed. This slide shows some of the projects that are nearby our site. The site fronts on Wallabout Channel, which you can see in this slide, between the Brooklyn Navy Yard and the Williamsburg community. The project site and the Navy Yard property immediately adjacent to it currently have open uses. The project site is a bus parking lot at the moment. North of the project site is the Naftali development, three towers. The tower closest to Division, closest to our site, is scheduled to be 23 stories. Directly across the street from the project site is Roberto Clemente ball field and park. The project site is currently zoned M31 because at one point it was a Con Edison power plant. The plant was in use until 1999. It was demolished in 2009. The site was remediated from hazardous materials in 2014, and the site was sold to the applicant in 2019. The site, along with the Navy Yard, were designated as an industrial business zone in 2006. IBZ prohibits rezonings to allow residential use, although in these days it would have been nice. The M3 district has an FAR floor area ratio of 2. The M15 district would have an FAR of 5, which is similar to the densities allowable in the R7X and R73 districts, which you can see in here or join the project site. The Navy Yard to the south has an overall master plan, so it doesn't conform to the M12 that you see there. I guess I'm not quite sure that goals is the correct word at the top of this slide, but certainly the project has aims that are beyond positive return on investment. The aims are to redevelop the site in a manner that links the new residential development to the north, the established South Williamsburg neighborhood to the east, and the Navy Yard to the south. The proposed project will contribute to the neighborhood and the broader community by improving a vacant lot, which is currently used for school bus parking, creating a public waterfront walkway that will ultimately connect with similar public ways both north and south. The project would also create additional public access points from Kent Avenue to the waterfront and the East River. providing space. The project would also provide space for both offices and retail businesses, which can offer services to and employment opportunities for the local residents. And ultimately, and maybe more importantly from the city's point of view, generate tax revenues, both from real estate sales and payroll taxes. The proposed development includes 500,000 square feet, over 500,000 square feet of office space, over 200,000 square feet of retail space, over an acre of publicly accessible public open space, over 200 below-grade parking spaces, and over 100 bicycle parking spaces. Neville will now take you through how this all looks when it will be built.
No, there we go. Good evening. My name is Neville Gotchabai. I'm with Marvel Architects, architects for the project. Slide in front of you has the floor plan of the ground floor on the left side of the screen, showing the base of the commercial building on the lower left and the lower portion of the retail on the top right of that first image. You can also see kind of the blue dots, red dots for various access points throughout the site. There are kind of 3 access points to the waterfront. One is the visual corridor to the south, the access on the north at the end of Division, right at the waterfront, and then publicly accessible space through the center of the site, which is spanned by a couple of bridges connecting commercial portions of the upper stories. The illustration on the right kind of indicates the various areas, the SPW, the SPAA, and the public access areas. This slide digs into some of the issues that have been discussed with agencies and community board, which dealt with access to the entry of the commercial building. The red dot kind of represents kind of access from the street point and crossing of the bike lane from a lay-by that kind of lives within the parking lane. And it also illustrates the truck access into the site and maneuvering within the footprint of the site, which is designed to minimize how often trucks need to kind of interact with the bike lane, which was one of the concerns raised by various agencies and community groups. Here you have kind of a rooftop plan of the project, showing the kind of landscape, which you'll see in the forthcoming slides, the footprint of the tower, which is aligned, there's a longer presentation, which is aligned to one of the predominant grids that come together, the city grids that come together in this area from the design side. And then moving to kind of a view from the waterfront side of the project, you can see the Shore Public Walkway, which was designed by MPFP, spanning from Division all the way to the right side of the page where it abuts the future Navy Yard master plan site, as well as kind of links up with the visual corridor back out to Kent to provide a number of access points to the site. Kind of both retail and office frontages at the ground floor access this area, and then various components of the Shore Public Walkway kind of bring the walkway down to the water, which was something that we worked with city planning on in the center of the site, where you have a fully accessible point to get as close to the water line as possible. As opposed to kind of most of the other areas, which is fairly elevated in a more traditional waterfront style. These are some renderings provided by MPFP, kind of reflecting views from the site. This is kind of in the center of the site, looking out over the waterfront and toward the east side. And you can kind of see that low access point in the center of the screen. And then this is that same feature, looking back toward Division on the left and then down the center of the site on the right. You can kind of see where the site dips down to bring access to the waterfront. Moving back out to Kent, where you can kind of see kind of an illustration of how the building would situate on the street front. This is a little bit closer to Bedford on Division, seeing the low bar box on the right, which has the retail in the base and 3 or 4 stories of commercial on it. The connector bridges in the center, and then the larger 23-story volume on the left. Moving to the left side of the site, this is a view down the visual corridor, and you can kind of see the commercial entrance, loading dock entrance area in the foreground on the right there. And then just a little bit closer up the street, where you can see the lobby of the commercial building, the imprint of kind of the access point for vehicles on the streetscape, to make sure there's no conflict with a vehicle kind of approaching the site, dropping passengers off with the crossing the bike lane. And I think that, and then moving back to the various actions, I'll let Ray pick it up from here.
Well, the actions necessary to see this project developed are a zoning amendment from M31 to M15, certain bulk waivers from the waterfront provisions, a special permit for the public parking garage, and certification that the waterfront public access requirements have been met. In some detail, quickly we can go through the setback distances that we violate, and we can go through the heights that we violate and the shorefront facing wall that we violate, and then we violate all those things in order to accomplish this design, which we feel is superior to what would be required if we complied with all this stuff. Thank you, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Is there market analysis that shows demand for office space in this location?
The short answer is no. We didn't undertake a market analysis. It's premature to do that. The project won't be built for a couple of years. And so we haven't expended the money and effort to do that. We're not sure what value it would have. But our client and his local consultants are confident of their ability to create a successful office building at this location. There are many companies, both large and small, looking for space outside of Manhattan. They're looking in Dumbo, they're looking at the Navy Yard, they're looking in the Domino area in downtown Brooklyn. The local workforce that exists in these neighborhoods that surround the site are something that companies are looking for, and being close to them and having the walk-to-work possibility for those employees is something that they value. There are a lot of small businesses that proliferate in North Brooklyn, and they're going to need modern, bigger office space in the coming years as they expand. There are also larger potential users, not-for-profits, educational, medical, health providers are looking for space in Brooklyn. Pratt Institute just backfilled space that WeWork left in the Navy Yard. Two Trees project at 10 Grant Street is fully occupied. And last year in Dumbo, there were over 70 leases signed. So those, I think Northwell also is looking, Northwell Health is looking for space. So there are people looking for space today. We believe there'll be a market for people looking for space in 3 years when this project is completed.
Thank you. What are the expected impacts to the greenway along Kent Avenue, both during and after construction?
Well, during construction, as you can see, this is a big site. It's 115,000 square feet. We believe that the project staging, project construction can happen within the site. So therefore, the construction equipment doesn't have to be on the sidewalk, doesn't have to be on the streets. It can enter the site on division, and all the activities for construction, or substantially most of the activities for construction, will happen on site. In any case, if you want to use the city streets, you need a permit from the Office of Construction Mitigation and Coordination at DOT. DOT is the I don't know how to use the word, the parent of the greenway. They coddle it, so I'm sure they're not going to let us do anything that is disruptive. In terms of operation, once the building is completed, we made a number of changes to limit vehicular conflicts with the greenway, and those were resulting from DOT's input into the project. The public parking garage exit was originally to be on Kent. It was moved to Division and paired with the entrance to the garage. And also the truck access the truck maneuverability was moved on site so that when trucks come to the site, they head in, so therefore they're looking at the bike path when they go through it, and then they turn around while within the site so that when they exit the site, they're also looking at the bike path. Plus, peak hour, there are 10 trucks, and today with the bus parking, there are a heck of a lot more. So changing the use of the site will help the bike path, and also this being able to maneuver the trucks on the site will make it as safe as possible.
Thank you. Last question. The DEIS states there is an unavoidable adverse impact on the sidewalk at the corner of Division and Wythe Avenues outside the development site. Has DOT analyzed this area and determined whether mitigation is feasible?
DOT has done that. And the problem is it's a block front between Bedford and Berry. It's like a block and a half from the site. And it just so happens on that block, the sidewalk is obstructed in 9 places by, you guessed it, trees. Taking down the trees and paving over the tree pits would mitigate, assuming that the Parks Department didn't go out and kill some people. So it was deemed not feasible because the way to solve the problem would be in conflict with other important city policies.
All right. Thank you. The panel is now excused. We'll now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No one has signed up to testify. Has anyone else here like to testify on this item?
All right, thanks so much. Hearing no further comment, this item is now closed. Please call the next item.
Calendar item number 2,
Thank you.
2118 Avenue U, a private application seeking a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment to facilitate the development of a new 4-story mixed-use building of approximately 20,450 square feet in Sheepshead Bay, Community District 15. Community Board 15 voted to approve this item on February 27th. Please state your name and present this application.
Good evening, Elise Fullader from Eric Palatnik, PC. I'm here for 2018 Avenue U. You can see it up on the slide, and I guess I do. How do I do it?
On the top.
There's the right button. Okay, there you go. Thank you so much. We seek a zoning map amendment and text amendment, zoning text amendment to facilitate a new mixed-use development in the Sheepshead Bay section of Brooklyn Community District 15. The proposal seeks a zoning map amendment to amend a series of properties, which I'll show you in a moment, from R4 C13 to R4 to R6A C24, and a text amendment for MIH. Okay, here you go. There we go. There you go. You can see the building up there and its context. The proposed actions would facilitate the redevelopment of Block 7354, Lot 8, that occupies the southwest corner of East 22nd Street and Avenue U, with a new 4-story plus penthouse mixed-use building to contain 20,450 square feet, or 3.41 FAR, with 10 dwelling units. The ground floor would contain 4,800 square feet of commercial retail space, and the cellar would provide 10 total off-street parking spaces. The proposal is for 1 parking space per dwelling unit. Of the proposed 10 dwelling units, 3 dwelling units would be made affordable under MIH option 1. Here you can see its context with all the bus routes and how close it is in proximity to subways. Next slide. The proposed R6A C24 district would complement the character of the surrounding area, where pre-existing mid-rise apartment buildings are in proximity. The proposed R6A C24 district would reduce the non-compliant status of the 4-story apartment building located within the project area. In addition, the depth of the commercial overlay would be reduced on this block to 100 feet from 150 feet, thereby limiting the expansion of the commercial uses onto residential side streets of East 21st and East 22nd Streets. The proposed new C24 overlay variant would reduce the required amount of parking spaces for accessory commercial uses compared to the existing C13, consistent with access to mass transit with the Q train located nearby at Avenue U and East 16th Street. Moreover, the C24 district would increase the range of permitted neighborhood commercial uses consistent with a neighborhood arterial. Given the size of the commercial space, no off-street accessory parking would be required. Here you can see what the rezoning looks like on the tax map. Here you can see it's reduced from 150 commercial overlay to 100. Okay. There will be 3 affordable units. By providing an MIH unit of 3 out of 4 residential, by providing MIH units on 3 out of 4 of the residential floors, there'll be an MIH unit on 75% of the residential stories. Per zoning section 2396B1, the affordable units are distributed on more than 65% of the residential stories. There you go. Okay. As you can see here, there will be a green roof and the building will be solar ready, and I have more slides regarding that. There you go. The site is not in a flood zone, but per community board recommendations, we are going to raise the mechanical because everybody's, very concerned about flooding, and so we're just going to take the precautions. Okay, here's more information on that. I'd also like to add garbage will be stored in the building, which was something the community board was concerned about. We're not in a flood zone, but we're going to raise mechanicals, as I just stated, and there will be a green roof above the first floor with stormwater retention, as well as a green roof above the 4th floor and the penthouse. Here you go. This is the site is located in a hurricane evacuation zone 3. That was something that came up that we wanted to address. And then we'd like to say that we have been reaching out to neighbors throughout the process, and we have almost unanimous support at the community board, which we met with many times. And I have additional slides showing the current site and what it looks like if you have any additional questions. So I can go through, show you what it looks like today. But you can see all the commercial with residential above spaces. There's a lot of photographs, and there you go. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Where will the MIH units be located within the building, And how do you plan on complying with the requirement that affordable units be distributed across 65% of the building's floors?
So there'll be one on each residential floor, so 75% of the building will have an MIH unit on it, as per requirements.
Thank you. Do you have an affordable housing administrator in mind at this time for the MIH units?
We do not have one at this time, but we are looking for one, and that is part of our process right now.
Okay, thank you. Have you explored financing options for providing deeper levels of affordability?
Unfortunately, there are no financing options that provide for deeper affordability, other than projects that are 100% affordable.
And that's not something that the team is interested in exploring?
If there were
At
more
this point,
programs, we would be,
100%
but there's,
affordable.
no, we're not 100% affordable, we're not interested in exploring, but if other programs were to open up in the future, it's something we would consider.
Okay, thank you. And you spoke about this a little bit, but have the neighboring property owners and tenants been informed of this application?
Yes, and we've been in constant contact with the community board as well. We met with them a few times.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
The panel is now excused. We'll now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes.
No speaker slips submitted. Does anyone else like to testify?
Okay, all right. This item is now closed. Please call the next item.
Calendar item number 3, 197 Berry Street. A private application seeking a zoning map amendment to facilitate a conversion of 18,000 square feet of a sub-cellar parking garage to a self-storage locker facility while maintaining an approximately 8,000 square feet, 42-space parking garage at 197 Berry Street in Williamsburg, Community District 1, Brooklyn. Community Board 1 held a public hearing for this item on March 12th and has not yet submitted a recommendation. Please state your name and present this application.
Good evening. I'm Adam Taubman, land use attorney from Kramer Levin, Naftalis and Frankel. I'm representing the applicant, Benzing 250 LLC. We're here tonight seeking a rezoning to reduce the accessory parking requirements applicable to the property located at 197 Berry Street. This application is a bit different from other applications that go through ULURP because we're seeking to modify zoning regulations applicable to an existing building. And as I'll hopefully make clear over the course of this presentation, we are seeking the parking reduction because it's become clear in the 14 years since the building was constructed that there's a significant misalignment between the parking regulations that control the building today and what the building actually needs. I just want to start by providing some context for the project site. The address is 197 Berry Street. This is an aerial view showing that it's located on the southern half of the block, bounded by Berry Street to the west, North 3rd Street to the south, North 4th Street to the north, and Bedford Avenue to the east. This area map from our application again highlights the location on the southern half of that block. As you can see from the map, the surrounding area consists mostly of low-rise residential buildings and mixed-use residential and commercial buildings. The site today is located in a special mixed-use district with a paired residential and manufacturing district designation. That's the case for a number of blocks in the surrounding area, and the particular zoning district designation for this site is an M12/R6B district. The regulations under that district designation allow a range of uses: residential, commercial, community facility, and manufacturing, and establish a maximum FAR of 2. And germane to this application is the accessory parking requirements, which include, in the case of residential uses, a half a space for every dwelling unit, and in the case of retail uses, 1 space for every 300 square feet of floor area. This is a view again of the existing building from the corner of Berry Street and North 3rd Street. It's a 3 to 5 story mixed use building with 3 cellar levels. It was constructed in 2010. It has an existing floor area of about 82,000 square feet, which equates to the maximum FAR of 2. And the existing uses consist of 84 dwelling units in residential use, 3 Use Group 6 retail establishments, a health club, which was allowed pursuant to a BSA special permit, and then the accessory parking garage, which is the subject of this application. The entrance to that garage is on Berry Street, tucked behind the tree on the left side of the building there. You'll see that in greater detail in just a moment. But what I want to highlight for now is that the accessory parking requirement under the applicable regulations is 142 spaces. 42 of those spaces are required for the residential uses in the building, and the remaining 100 are required for the commercial uses in the building. Another thing I want to point out while we're looking at this slide is that Berry Street, or at least the portion of Berry Street adjacent to this building, is part of the DOT Permanent Open Streets program. So vehicles are restricted to local access and deliveries. You'll see that there's a barricade at the southern end of Berry Street. There's another one just like it at the northern end, restricting physical access to the street frontage. And just recently, DOT implemented some changes to the Open Streets program as it relates to Berry Street. First, bicycle traffic is now being allowed in both directions. And second, certain stretches of Berry Street to the north of this site now accommodate vehicular traffic in the reverse direction. So as a continuous stretch, Berry Street does not have vehicular traffic in a single direction. Both those changes are expected to reduce the volume of vehicular traffic on this site from even the existing conditions. These are images of the entrance to the parking facility on Berry Street that I mentioned just a moment ago. The parking garage is located primarily below grade at the subcellar level. 26,000 gross square feet of the total 28,000 gross square feet are at that below grade level. The remaining 2,000 square feet comprise this entrance area. The parking garage is attended, and it's operated by use of 2 car elevators located at the rear of this entrance area. Essentially, cars are dropped off with an attendant who then brings the car down to the garage area and back up when the user is ready to use the car again. These are photos of the below grade portion of the garage where cars are parked. It's showing in part where the 2 car elevators empty out into the below grade space. But the bigger story we're telling here is that the garage is significantly underutilized today. Only approximately 80 spaces on average are utilized at any given time. Of that amount, only 3 to 7 are used by residents in the building. And those numbers are actually inflated because the garage charges rates that are well below the rates of competing garages in the surrounding area just to get customers through the door. We've identified a few reasons for this in the course of preparing this application. First, the zoning regulations do not reflect the observation that the city has made recently in other planning contexts, which is that development sites in transit-rich areas do not require as much parking as other areas. But there are also factors specific to this location. First, a number of residents in the building have told the applicant that they don't use the garage because the operation of the car elevators result in significant delays in retrieving cars. And second, we believe that the implementation of the Open Streets program will only further reduce demand for the parking garage going forward. This diagram shows the rezoning that we're proposing. We're seeking to rezone the southern half of the block that contains the development site from the existing paired M12 R6B district to an M14 R6B district. And I'll note quickly that you can probably see that a portion of the development site extends beyond the area that would be rezoned under this application. It's a convention of rezoning applications in New York City that the rezoned area comprise some regular portion of a block. That's what we're proposing to do in our case. The portion of the development site that will be located outside of the rezoned area will still benefit from the regulations of the proposed zoning district under the split lot regulations of the zoning resolution. This table shows very briefly a comparison between the regulations that apply under the existing zoning and the regulations that would apply under the proposed rezoning. One thing to highlight here is that the applicable bulk regulations, use regulations, other regulations are all the same under the 2 districts. The only change relevant to this site is that the parking regulations for commercial uses and manufacturing uses are either eliminated or significantly reduced under the proposed zoning district designation. What that means in our case is that the existing requirement of 142 spaces would be reduced to a requirement of 42 spaces. All of those required 42 spaces would be accessory to the residential uses in the building. As part of the application, our environmental consultant, Philip Habib and Associates, conducted a study of parking supply within the immediate vicinity of the development site. They found that within a quarter-mile radius of the property, there is an existing surplus of off-street parking spaces, meaning spaces in other parking garages that are publicly accessible, as well as a surplus of on-street parking spaces. And they concluded more generally that a surplus would remain even with the proposed reduction of the parking garage on the subject site. I'll also point out quickly that this site is very well situated in relation to public transportation options, including the L train, multiple bus lines, and the New York City Water Ferry. With the proposed rezoning and the reduction in the accessory parking requirement, the applicant would be able to reconfigure the 26,000 gross square feet located below grade to allocate a portion of it to the reduced size parking garage, and the balance would be converted to a self-storage facility located below grade. This is an illustrative floor plan of that self-storage facility. But what it shows both in the floor plan and in the table to the left is that the storage units in the facility will really be small closet-like storage units, sometimes referred to as lockers. The intent here is to provide convenient self-storage solutions for residents that live in the building or for residents and local businesses in the surrounding area. From what we've heard in the course of doing outreach in connection with this application, residents in the building, residents and small businesses in the surrounding area do find that there's a growing community need for this type of facility. The existing entrance area that I described a few moments ago will be segregated into two portions. The portion shown in yellow will continue to serve the reduced size parking garage located below grade. It will have its own dedicated car elevator that attendants will continue to use to bring cars down to the garage and back up from the garage. The portion shown in yellow, which would be segregated by bollards, would be used to provide access to the storage facilities below grade, specifically for customers of that storage facility. And for that use too, there would be a dedicated garage at the rear of the entrance area to provide that access. This is the end of our presentation. I just want to highlight again that the application that we filed follows a long road of public outreach where we sought community input. I'm proud to say that residents of the building, including the condo board, support the application, as well as a number of community groups in Brooklyn. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Is the applicant interested in applying for further reductions in residential parking requirements?
We're very focused on this application right now, which is limited to the commercial accessory parking requirement. As I just mentioned, we are at this point following a fairly long road of community outreach and empirical study of parking supply in the area. If an opportunity ever presented itself to seek a further reduction in parking, we'd want to pursue that same sort of process to determine the feasibility of that sort of approval.
Okay. Can you speak to any concerns expressed at the community board?
So as was mentioned before I began the presentation, we are still within the community board review period. We've had a public hearing at the land use committee, and we will be again appearing at the full board community meeting in a few weeks. I would say there were no real concerns registered at the land use committee meeting. There were a number of questions about how the garage would operate in conjunction with the proposed self-storage facility, particularly with respect to joint access by pedestrians and vehicles. I believe we answered those questions to the satisfaction of the committee members. There were also some questions about who would operate the garage and the data underlying the parking study that I described. One thing I'd like to note, though, is that there was a public hearing, as I said, and there was only one statement by a member of the public. That was from a representative of the North Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, and it was in support of the application.
Okay. Thank you. And last question, are there plans for retrofitting electric charging stations into the remaining parking spaces in the cellar?
I would say right now there's a sincere interest in incorporating those types of facilities into the proposed garage. The applicant is currently investigating the feasibility. The preliminary findings are that with the power source for the garage space, possibly 10 EV spaces or maybe more could be accommodated. There's a little more work that needs to be done to figure out exactly what that plan would look like, though.
Okay, thank you. All excused. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes. No speaker slips.
No speaker slips.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to speak?
All right, this item is now closed, and this ULURP public hearing is now closed. The Borough President will review these applications and submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission, which will hold its hearing on these items at a later date. As a reminder, members of the public may submit comments to testimony@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for the Borough President's consideration until Friday, March 29th. This meeting is now adjourned.